Shin-Arken podcast. It's been a while since we did one of these, but we're back for this episode. What's up, Arkin?
Hey, what's going on, man? How you been?
Not bad, yourself?
Excellent, excellent. Ready to talk about some stuff and
Yeah.
things?
Stuff and things. The best things. The best things
That's it.
and the most pertinent stuff.
That's it. That's all
Neither
that's
neither
necessary
much I
in
can
life.
actually guarantee we're going to be talking about, but uh,
Mhm.
so what have you been up to since Heart of Thorns came out? Because our last episode was shortly before Heart of Thorns came out, or no, actually no, it was a while
It was
before.
a ways.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
ways.
I was sort of theory crafting some things, and then as soon as the expansion came out, I sort of had an idea what I was going to do, and the funniest part about that was I haven't changed from the way I've been playing since then. I have the build that I want. Now, is it meta? No, it's not because we're going to discuss why later on as you've seen in the tournaments. But um, it definitely feels as if, at least on my end, and I'm not sure if it comes in the terms with Warriors Berserker, but you when you play it through the BWEs, you can kind of get an idea. Unless they do some massive buffs or nerfs, you have an idea of what you're going to spec into. Traits, skills, whatever the case is, you know what you're going to take. So that's what I've been doing. What about yourself?
I have been, well, let's see. Just because I'm a PvX player, I've kind of been doing everything in
Right.
in the expansion I've been doing. Oh, well, no, I take that back. Not since the day the expansion came out. I did a whole bunch between our last episode and when the expansion launched, but
Right.
funny enough, not any since the day it came out. I have not touched World roaming since,
Really?
yeah, since the
Not
expansion came
even
out.
now? Even now?
E-
Wow.
yeah, even now, like I'm getting the itch to go back and do it again, but right now, or as of this moment, I have still not touched the Borderlands other than the first day that I went, other than the first day of the expansion.
Why is that, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what was the reasoning behind that?
The main reason is there's just so much other stuff that I wanted to do. Like it's I mean, there's a whole bunch of other
Priority.
yeah, there's a whole bunch of other problems involving World of the World specifically, and a big part of it was also the matchup I'm in.
Right.
Maguma and Stormbow File. I don't like fighting those servers, but that's a whole different topic. But
Right.
basically, there was just a whole bunch of shiny stuff in PvP and PvE that I wanted to do. So that's where
And
all
that's
my
cool.
yeah, that's where all my time went.
There's nothing wrong with that, absolutely, especially if that's what you prefer. And that's not to say you'll never ever, you know, go back to World versus World. It's just when an expansion offers you a significant amount of content, you can't do everything. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So you pick what most interests you. So that's
Yeah.
okay.
Now, as far as what I have actually been doing all the PVE Maguma jungle stuff. I went through the story. I've worked on some map completion stuff. I've kind of just PVE everywhere. Like I've done all that stuff. By the way, if you ever get the interest, the boss in the Dragon Stand zone is really good. It's a really fun fight. Like if you ever get the itch
I've never
for
been there. Yeah. What is
yeah,
it like? I have no idea what it's about.
basically think of did you ever do the Zaitan fight way
I
back?
did, and it wasn't very impressive back then because of how blah. This is
Base
my opinion. It felt like it.
basically it's the Zaitan fight done like a million times better with
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, with like all of the players in the zone at the same time.
Oh, good.
It's really good.
Okay, that's
It,
good. All right, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Excellent. That's
yeah,
great.
it's fun stuff. And then other than that, I've just been playing the warrior, practicing berserker. In PvP, I've been finding out all of the fun with balance and warrior at the moment.
Yeah.
We could probably talk about that a little bit later, but I've just been messing around with the warrior, and then I've also been messing around with some of my other characters. Like right now for the team that I pulled together for the PvP leagues. I'm playing Chronomancer. I'm working on practicing
Do you
Chronomancer.
like it?
Yeah, actually, it's I liked it back in the beta weekend events,
Right.
and I still like it a lot. And the way it fits into how our team's going to kind of operate and the other classes we have on there really well, especially because of Portal.
Well, again, those portal plays, as we've seen with the recent tournaments, are huge, especially when you're running two of them. So, well, actually, technically four, if you have two mesmers utilizing your F5. So you can technically have four of them going off. Not at once, obviously, but in succession, which is nice. But
Yeah.
now here's a question I have for you. This is kind of an extreme one.
What's up?
Do you potentially? Do you see? Now say they make Warriors viable soon, but you've invested so much time into Chrono. Do you see yourself sticking with Chrono?
That depends. Like it really depends on what they do. I have like 5 different answers, all competing. It really
Right.
depends on what they do with Warriors. I have a feeling that I will stick with Chronomancer until we figure as a team that we could use the Warrior now, or
Right.
like the Warrior provides something that we don't get with the Chronomancer, and then factoring in my experience on the class and whatnot. But right now, the portals and just the things that Chronomancer brings to the table for our team are so beneficial to our overall team strategy and team comp that right away, no, I'm gonna stick on Chronomancer because we've kind of set. Okay, this is what we're going to use for our comp. We're just going to practice with this for a while, and then if we feel we need to make any changes down the line, we'll do it then and not now. Because that was a big problem that we had early on with our team was we were trying to figure out. We were basically making knee-jerk reactions to losses by changing our comp, and
Right.
that's not a good idea. Um,
No.
so
I mean, in some cases, it's a necessity. When
Yeah.
you realize, hey, look, this was shut out pretty consistently. Maybe something needs to be done there. And if you can't find anything that can be done within your own class, then yeah, I could see that being the case. We have to swap, but constantly doing it, not a good idea.
Yeah. So to avoid that, we've all agreed that we're just going to stick with the comp we have and practice with that, and we're going to get our rotations, our communication, our team strategy, all that stuff locked down first, and then we can revisit the team comp in the future if we feel the need. But
Right.
no, even if they make Warrior like amazing, I'll still be sticking with Chronomancer for the competitive stuff until that time comes where we look at
Do
our
need to
comp
swap,
again.
yeah.
Yeah. Now,
That's fair.
Now solo queue, I'm going ham on that shit. I am going all over. I really, really hope they do something to really help Warrior
Right.
because we've got a lot of deeper
Things.
than skin problems right now.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah,
Pretty deep.
pretty deep.
I think now this is something that I wanted to discuss just briefly. I don't like to discuss it too much because it goes off into a lot of ranting, but I wanted your opinion on this as well. I gotta agree with you. I think Warriors Berserker is the most underwhelming specialization out there. I do. I completely see that. The proof is there within the tournament that not even one Warrior was actually played.
Yep.
Not even one. So, do you think that maybe, just maybe, that they need to be a little more careful with these buffs for Warrior or nerfs to other classes, that they don't turn it into another situation to like what we had, with Xiaopo? Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it seems like they can be so heavy-handed with it. It only takes one patch, one to really do something that can really, just hamper things up way too much. So that's why I was curious about what you think about it.
Yeah, I think they are going to be a bit more cautious this time, just because the Warrior issues right now are so like it's not a numbers thing for Warrior. It's just how our traits are set up. It's how our skills work. It's how the environment that we're currently trying to fight in is. Like, there's a lot of things that they're not going to be able to fix. If they're going to go for like a true fix, they're going to have to rework a lot of their design of Warrior, a lot of our traits and whatnot, because you can give us all the damage in the world, but if we can't hit anything, that damage is nothing. Its damage is
Right.
meaningless. Like, I have a feeling that that's why we didn't see any changes to Warrior, like base Warrior, at all since the expansion came out. That's why we've seen minimal changes to Berserker. That's why
Yeah.
I think the reason why we have not seen very many, if any, changes to Warrior or Berserker at all since the expansion came out is because they're doing a much deeper rework of the class or the traits or something like that to address these problems. And through that, I would imagine that they are being a lot more careful. They're being a lot more,
I hope you're right.
yeah, they're not being as
I do.
heavy-handed as they have been in the past because they know what'll happen if they are.
Well, that's the thing is you got to be careful. You got to be you're walking a fine line here.
Yeah.
A fine line to something that's, right now unviable to holy shit. you know, it's over the edge. You know
God
what I mean? So,
tier.
God tier. And it's a little rough, but like I said, I don't think they touched any classes base yet since the patch, which is an issue as well. They only really did specialization. That's the only thing they touched, as far as I knew or know. So I
Well,
definitely think. Now, here's another question I have for you. Do you think this is what I've been talking to a lot of thieves about? Do you think that revenants are pushing you out?
yes. The Revenants are putting both
Very easy
warriors
answer.
and thieves.
Yep, because that's exactly what they feel like, don't they?
Yep.
They feel like a mixture of warriors and thieves.
And they do
That's
everything of
scary.
both. Yep. And they do everything of both classes better.
That's scary, yeah. Damage, but also the mobility. Oh, geez, that is a scary concept to grasp. So I wanted your opinion on it because that's what I thought.
Yeah. Well,
Honestly, is that they are a mixture. They're literally thief warriors or Thoriers or
Thoriers. Thoriers. I like that name.
Thoriers.
Thoriers. But no, like that thought as far as like the thief, kind of pushing the thieves out really dawned on me when our team started using the phase transversal trick, where you'll have your revenant ask to have someone call a target in a team fight. You call that target, and then they can instantly just take the target and phase transversal, and boom, they're in that team fight from 1,200 yards away or 1,200 units away or whatever. It's
Even if they're not, though, I've noticed that the 5 second cooldown isn't very long. You're still going to get to where you need to go relatively quickly. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, that just it blows thief mobility out of the water. It definitely blows warrior mobility out of the water. It's like, yeah, it's ridiculous. And then you've got things like unrelenting assault, where it's basically 100 blades with evade frames on a single target.
That's what people have been comparing that to. It's essentially the ability to stick to your target, evade frames, and similar damage.
Yeah,
That's a weird concept as well. I've never thought I'd see that. It seems awkward at best. You know what I mean? That was the whole point of 100 blades, is that, oh, this thing hits like a truck, but I can get out of I can get out of there.
Yeah.
You can't do that with unrelenting assault. That's an issue with that as well.
yeah. There are a lot of things that they gave revenants that just by their design outclass thieves and warriors, and that is a large reason why people feel the way they do about revenants.
Yeah, and that's something that I hope they need to. That's the question I was curious to ask before. Is that if we keep buffing things, you know what I mean? If we just keep buffing every class and then without nerfing, do you think we're just going to keep going with power creep consistently? Because by no means am I saying that certain classes don't need buffs, but I would say that nerfs are more of a necessity right now than anything else.
Yeah, I was originally of the mind that power creep, like power creep everywhere. But the thing that this I think this happened during a discussion on one of my streams is the only place that I feel power creep really matters is in PvE, because everything is balanced against a certain, all the creatures are designed and balanced against a certain level of player power, and we've already kind of had those creatures balanced against what the elite specs are balanced as right now. So as long as they don't buff them ridiculously even further, I think we'll be fine. In PvP, it's if the whole power creep thing, like everyone is fighting everyone else, so the relative stats and whatnot are the relative level of everything doesn't really go out of whack unless you're in a situation right now where you have all of the elite specs and whatever versus thieves and warriors.
Right. But again, that's what we were talking about earlier about drawing that fine line, dude. If you're not careful,
Yeah,
and that's what I'm scared about, is you're going to have an issue to where it's going to be just like, well, we have now given the nerfs that we were going to give to another class who may not have needed so many buffs to begin with. I'm not saying they didn't need buffs, but the buffs given were probably not a necessity.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think, again, a lot of heavy-handedness, a lot of carefulness, but that's something I just wanted to briefly touch on because I've been seeing a lot of teams now run double Revenant, and it's been working very, very efficiently.
Yeah.
Very efficiently.
Yeah.
Because they have the damage they have the Berserker damage while the sustain of holding a point, you know?
And
what's that?
I do imagine that there will be nerfs. I've seen a few specific things that I can imagine will probably get a nerf thrown on them. Things like the days on Dragon Hunter traps. I could see that getting either an internal cooldown or being removed or something. Like it's not that it's broken, but it's so disruptive when tied with all of the other stuff in the kit that it can throw a lot of things out of whack. Now, of course, we've seen in tournaments or we've seen in the Pro League so far that anyone running a Dragon Hunter is pretty much a rip. Like all the teams that ran Dragon Hunter lost, like
Except one. Yeah.
except one. And like you were saying shortly before we actually started up the cast, you were saying it was one of the most overrated elite specs since the
Well, it
expansion
is.
came out.
That's the problem. It is because it almost feels like I was comparing it to 100 Blades Warriors back in the day, where people don't know how to deal with it, so they will be bitch and moan for as long as they can, and then after realizing that whoa, this isn't that strong. In fact, it's a liability, as you can see. Again, further proof on the tournament. Then you start to realize, oh, it's not nearly as strong, and we're still looking back at. It still feels like it's Bruiser Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That seems to still be the name of the game. And I hate that, dude. I can't stand bruisers. I think the game should have defined roles. I mean, technically, bruiser is a role, but when you're doing pretty much everything that another class can do, almost as good, if not better, it's not really a role. You're just encompassing everything, and that seems to be a problem as well. But I will say that there are certain aspects of the Dragon Hunter tour I thought at the time were going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
I honestly thought teams were going to run 2 Dragon Hunters and destroy everything, but then after realizing the amount of range denial from Tempest, to a smaller degree, Scrappers and Druids on top of the sustain they've given to themselves and their teams, it's not even close to what you would think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you blow your traps and they have the sustain to tank it or avoid it, then what do?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
you're out of luck. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it is what it is, but it definitely is the most overrated, without a doubt. I think there were the numbers. There were 2 Guardians on the NA that were run. Obviously, 0 Warriors.
Yeah.
Which is that was not. I was expecting that. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. I don't think that came as a surprise to anyone. But
Yeah.
it's funny that you bring up the 100 Blades Warrior like way back at launch of the core game as a comparison for Dragon Hunter, because that's the exact same analogy that I was thinking when I was both running it and fighting it. It's like, yeah, this is crazy OP to people who don't understand how to counter it, but as soon as you figure out how to deal with it, and once the community in general figures out how to deal with it, it's not super crazy powerful, and it does have drawbacks on a team. Like the drawbacks aspect I found out when I was actually originally practicing Dragon Hunter for my team for leagues. We had me on Dragon Hunter, and I'd +1 team fights, and I'd kind of pseudo bunker points just by virtue of blowing people up before they could do anything to me.
Right.
And as we fought more and more skilled opponents, as we fought better and better teams, we were starting to realize that my lack of mobility was causing issues. Like, I couldn't get to the fights fast enough to be able to do what I needed to do while still also being able to kind of hold that back point. And it was some of the drawbacks there showed themselves, as well as like when I was in a case just like where you said I dropped my traps, and then what do? They've tanked all my traps. Now what do I got? Like I wouldn't be able to really sustain myself on a point after they took care of all my traps, and they ate my pseudo 100 blades, so to say.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I'm certainly nowhere near as good of a guardian as anyone else, but even still, like it. There was a hole in my strategy.
Right. Well, that just comes down to not a learn to play or a player issue. That just comes down from a design flaw. You know what I mean? Where you have to have your enemies, screw up. Like, you don't really have to play as well as your enemies have to screw up. That's the whole concept behind traps is, you place them down. Oh, I just saw you place that down. Either I'm going to dodge through it or I'm going to avoid it completely. I just completely nullified your utility. So, and just to bring back what you were saying with mobility as well as a little bit of sustain, I'm not exactly. You have to tell me after we talk about Dragon Hunter. I want to know about Berserkers, and on this one is they addressed the range issue Guardians had. We didn't have a ranged weapon for 3 years, dude. Scepter doesn't count. I don't care what anybody says. Scepter's a terrible weapon. It's not a ranged weapon. We never had a good ranged weapon. They took care of that with longbow, and I'm not gonna lie, longbow's a solid weapon. It really is. It helped address that issue, but that's it. That's all that was addressed. You didn't address the sustain, the mobility, the ability to stick on your opponent, because most dragon hunters will run, sword torch. Not, well, I was gonna say torch, swords, focus, and then you have your judge's intervention. Maybe you have your 2 teleports, and then what? How are you
Yeah.
gonna stick to your opponent? So the issue of staying on your opponent, the sustain wasn't adjusted to deal with, say, bruisers. They addressed one thing, and that's fine. I'm cool. I like the range weapon they gave us, but they it's like at the end of the day, they gave more damage out, but they also gave a lot more tankiness out at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, things are tankier
Oh yeah.
than before. Like I used to fight, like, DDLEs were tanky as hell before, but now you have Tempests who are just as tanky, if not tankier. I've seen like 40 plus seconds of protection
Oh
in
yeah.
an AOE. Like,
Yeah.
what is that? That is mind-boggling. You know what I mean? So I just want to know, what did they do? Did they address anything with Zerkers or Warriors? Were there any shortcomings that they kind of shored up or band-aided or whatever the case was?
Well, first, before I jump into that, there's one thing I wanted to touch on. When you said it's a design flaw with traps, I don't know if I would really agree that it's a design flaw. I think it's just that's the play style, or the typical situation that comes up with traps. Like, I don't think traps are designed badly. I think it's just they if you want to use them like really well in a fight, you gotta kind of work them in a different way than you might expect someone to use a trap. Like, instead of just being like a baddie like me and just dropping them all on point and then like waiting for people like you would expect a trap to, I think a better way to use them is maybe like dropping them at people's feet in the middle of a team fight and like causing, the dazes, and using them like I see a lot of the better ones, a lot of better Dragon Hunters use, where you basically use it as a quick interrupt, and then you've also got the effect there and all the damage and whatnot. Like, using traps in a way that you wouldn't really expect traps to be used.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I wanted to point something out. And while I agree that is the case, the issue, and this is something that I actually went over with a video that I made on how to fight Dragon Hunters, is that there's 2 obvious tells when you fight someone with traps, if you're fast enough to react. And first, it's the daze, because the daze happens before the trap activates. So as soon as you get daze and you dodge, you now have nullified it. Even if you teleport in and put it in, the daze happens always before. And then you always have the animation coming afterwards, and then the trap activates. I still think, to some degree, well, I get you have to use it, intelligently. You don't just like slam it on your feet and then hope that things go your way, obviously. But at the same token, what I mean, you're going to have smart players who, okay, look, I just got dazed, I can still dodge, I'm going to nullify whatever this was, especially when you're using like Dragon's Maw. Because the way that trap works outside of the daze is that when the mouth comes up, when it's about to clamp, the effects of the trap won't fully engage until the mouth closes. So if you can just get yourself out of there, whether it be from the daze or the animation itself, you now have completely nullified that trap. So I still think, while I agree with you, I still think it comes down to your enemy screwing up more than you playing it smart, I think, to some degree.
Yeah. Although, as a warrior, there's a lot of mind play where you can get your opponents to screw up. Like, it's on your side, it's a game of getting your opponent to screw up and then taking advantage of those screw ups. That's
right.
That's something I've learned to do with warrior for many years.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of warrior, going back to your original question, as far as Berserker, that the whole survivability thing, and even somewhat the damage, but mainly survivability is one of the big reasons why Warrior is in the situation it is, and why Berserker is in the situation it is. Because the main thing that Warrior is needed, and especially needed after Heart of Thorns dropped with all the extra damage that everyone got on their elite specs, is we can't survive. We cannot get in, tank things, and stay in a fight for long enough to be a true asset to the fight, unless we're running, vanilla Axe Shield Greatsword Rampage, +1 builds. We just can't stay in the fight long enough against all of the active mitigation and spike damage and condition overload that we see coming from the other elite specs, and that is what's put the Warrior in the situation it's been. And I also think that's why Thieves are hurting right now as well, is the two primary like melee classes can't stay in a fight. They can't sustain themselves because they get shut down by active defenses, passive defenses, natural damage mitigation, or just being blown up. And
Right.
it's the Berserker Elite Spec did not address any of that for us. It basically gave us damage and arguably watered down damage at that. Like we didn't even get a major damage boost out of Berserker aside from maybe a few things and certain Kandi setups. But overall, we did not get as much of a damage increase as say a Dragon Hunter or say a I'm trying to think of another good example or Revenant. Like we got stuff, but those tools didn't really benefit us in the ways we needed them to. They're kind of just like this bag of stuff that we can use, but they don't really synergize super well with a lot of other things. A lot of our problems, a lot of the warrior problems come down to traits, and the way our trait lines are set up don't really make it so Berserker synergizes well with them. We don't have a lot of things that from the Berserker kits help our sustain. The rage skills, the rage utilities that we got are basically just a different flavor of physical skills that also happen to give us adrenaline when we use them. And we didn't need those. Like the physical skills we had, people weren't using other than Rampage and occasionally things like Stomp and Bolas. We didn't use those because they weren't helping our sustain, our defensive capability, which is why, or that need for sustain came. Restarting this thought, the reason we weren't using them was because they didn't benefit our sustain, and that shows that the sustain was a problem for us before. Hence, why everyone was running either healing shouts or stances, and we weren't able
Right.
to really run much outside of those skills, those utility skills, because we would die otherwise, or we would at least heavily increase our risk of dying.
Right.
And the Berserker didn't really give us many tools to deal with that. Now, there is some trait synergy. I'm not saying there's no trait synergy between Berserker and the rest of our trait lines. That's not the case at all. Like we have some cool gameplay with a lot of stun breaking stuff that we can get with Berserker, plus rousing resilience and defense. We've got a few different Kandi application things that we can mess around with between Berserker and Arms. It's just overall we didn't get the type of synergy for sustain that a lot of other classes got, or we didn't get a lot of active mitigation. In fact, we didn't get any active mitigation other than maybe a stun break and counter clear on Berserk mode if we have the trait for it. Like we just
Right.
didn't get what we needed for the PvP scene. For PvE, we got plenty of things, but
Well, unfortunately, again, for me personally, this game should be balanced around PvP and then kind of like trickle down to PvE where your mobs aren't moving. They're not intelligent. So that is, I can definitely see that being the case, and that's another issue. It's just I look at things like that, and I look at what the elite specs were supposed to be, and it's supposed to be an alternative, and it's not even supposed to be an upgrade, so to speak. But I got to tell you, 9 out of 10 right now, or whatever the case is, they are better than most of your trees, if not all, or I'm sorry, lines, and people will take them because of that simple fact. Same with me. Nowadays it's virtues, valor, dragon hunter.
yeah.
No, it almost feels as if the issue with again Guardian hasn't been addressed as well. If you want to talk about traits, dude, core Guardian traits are just absolutely horrendous. But it is what it is. I can't really do anything against it. And it's funny because when you talk about sustain, and again, just touch on this before we talk about the others if you want. I almost felt like a warrior when I was playing in any sort of tournament setting, because as soon as I got focused, as soon as my shield went down, I was done. It's almost like the same thing as soon as like an endure pain goes down. You're done.
Yep.
You're done. I can't run away. I can't disengage. As soon as my shield of courage was down, I was essentially done.
Yep.
And that is something that they need. I don't think they need to address too much. I just think that they need to look at other aspects and say, hey, look, that comp or that spec that can do this, 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 and this without giving up anything needs to be looked at more so than other classes' shortcomings. Because, again, like I said earlier, I'm not saying this is every single case, but at least for now, there definitely need to be more nerfs than there need to be buffs. Because if we just keep buffing and buffing and buffing shit, it's just gonna keep climbing. The power creep will never end, and I think that's what really, really should be looked at.
Yeah, as long as they keep the balance in balance, I think number tweaking, like just increase the buffs and nerfs as long as everything stays balanced, as everyone harps on balance all the time would imply. We we need to just make sure everything is kind of in line with each other. We need to if we need to nerf things, nerf them. But at the same time, if certain things need to be buffed, go ahead and buff them. Like
Yeah,
it's
obviously,
balanced.
of
Yeah,
course. Yeah, that goes without saying. That goes without saying. Again, I'm not saying that everything needs to be nerfed, everything needs to be buffed, but there are definitely certain aspects, and in some cases, even obvious ones, where I'm like, yeah, that needs to be nerfed into the ground, or pretty, or or shave, whatever the case is. So, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. With the elite specs being alternatives and not upgrades, like there are a lot of things that could be toned down to kind of prevent that. And yeah, this is why earlier I was saying that I could see a lot of things just getting nerfed a little
Well, let
bit.
me ask you this too, because I think this also needs to be taken into consideration. Is a lot of core stuff for every class is outdated, I think.
Yeah,
Like a lot of core stuff is outdated. Mostly the traits, skills obviously being the case as well. It just feels like there's so much outdated stuff that why would you take it over the new stuff when it's obvious that the new stuff is far superior? Not in every case, obviously, but the vast majority, it seems like some things need to be updated,
yeah.
So
Warrior's a good poster child for that.
posters.
Uh, we just like one of the big problems with Warrior right now is we can't land our stuff, and the reason for that is because you have so much active and passive mitigation from the other classes that we can't do anything to really land the hits. We either have to deal with evade spam, or we have to deal with blind spam, or we have to deal with black spam, or we just get kited because our opponents can disengage from us a lot easier than they could before. Or in some cases, it's not even more so than before. They're just doing what they always did, but they have more tools to keep
Exactly.
themselves alive when they can't teleport away. Like a good example, and this is it's both a good example and a bad example at the same time. Mesmer's always been a pretty good hard counter to Warrior just because of their mechanics. But with Chronomancer now, not only can a Mesmer teleport away as they could before, not only can they use things like distortion and whatnot to handle Warriors, but since the specialization patch back in July, they also got Illusionary Persona. Or no, sorry, they didn't get Illusionary Persona baseline. There was the blinding trait, blinding dissipation.
Dissipation.
I don't know if that actually existed before or if it did.
It did not.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, it's a brand new trait. It's a nice trait too. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Oh,
But the addition of that, in addition to now with Chronomancer, the blocks on Shield 4, as well as all of the dazes and the wells and the things that they can eat through our stability, like Mesmers now have even more tools to shut down a warrior, and the warrior has not gained a single thing to counter that, to be able to deal with that. This is a much better example. Dragon Hunters, I think it's Shield of Courage. It's the F3, the
yes.
new virtue. That's just yet another block that a warrior can't eat through. Like we cannot bring Signet of Might to be able to counter that because we're locked into our defensive utilities with stances. Otherwise, we have to risk our sustain through in other fights. And having that extra shield there, in addition to things like Hard Light, where you punt people away when they're in your face.
I hate that trait, dude. I hate that. That is such a bull crap trait, dude. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, but thing is, just all of those extra tools, in addition to what those classes had before, are a large reason why Warrior is hurting right now. Is just we don't have any tools, and we didn't gain any tools to really be able to deal with all of this extra active mitigation and whatnot that we find ourselves dealing with in the current PvP situations.
Mm-hmm. Again, I guess it seems like the ability or the necessary band-aids for certain classes like Warrior weren't actually addressed, or rather, in some cases, some things that classes already had, they now have an even higher abundance of to be, later on.
Yeah.
But so now that we kind of got that out of the way, I think they know. I think that there are definitely quite obvious, skills traits that need to be looked at. Especially from my perspective, I can't stand passive mitigation or passive or strong passive traits that are just like, well, I thought I had you, but now I don't have you. because
Defy
this helped you.
pain.
Well, that's I get technically, yeah. I'm not trying to be rude. It's just that is one of them. Elixir S, just getting protection on CC, inflicting burning on a crit, just both offensive and defensive, strong traits
Yeah.
that don't require any thought process on your end. That doesn't jive with me,
Well,
at
yeah.
all.
You've
It
always
doesn't.
been you've always been against
Yeah, I
passive
can't
procs and
stand it.
passive mitigation.
That is something that outside of heavy light, which I think is the most BS trait, that Guardians still retain to this day, that we are the least passive, strong passive class in the game. So that is something that I'm still proud of, but at the same time, it still seems like we've introduced even more of it, across all classes. Not all classes, but some classes. So I think if that would be looked at or addressed, that would also help. Like, instead of, a lot of this passive mitigation, give them some active mitigation. You know what I mean? Give them something that they actually have to think about. Like, oh shit, listen, I'm about to get burst. Let me pop my shield. Or guess what? I popped my shield too early. Now I'm going to eat some damage. So
Yeah.
it's stuff like that I would love to see a lot more of, because I cannot stand for the life of me just passive offensive or defensive strong versions of it. You know what I mean? I hate that, dude. I know
Yeah.
we've been talking about it forever, and you hear me keep saying it, but I would love to see every single class just get rid of it and just utilize whatever active mitigation that the game should give you.
Yeah. All right. Now, before we go into, I'm guessing the next thing you want to talk about is just kind of going over each of the elite specs as
Yeah,
they
let's do
are.
that.
All right. Before we do that, I need to grab something real quick. It'll be like 5 seconds, and then I'll be right back.
1, 2, 3, 4. Nah, that's okay, but I can't count, man. What comes after 4? Is it 2? Nah, that's funny. But
You're terrible.
that was like 20 seconds.
I know. You're
You
terrible.
lied.
I am terrible. We're both terrible. Terrible podcast. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, elite specs. What compared to what we had before, where we were talking about them during the beta weekends and whatnot. Is there anything that has really stood out to you as far as different things? Is there anything that has really kind of caught your attention with the elite specs in the current PvP environment as opposed to what we had way back in betas?
Are we talking about betas that we're introducing the elites, or are we talking about like betas? Because like, what exactly? Would you mind being a little more specific on that?
Like when we were first talking about them, when they were first introduced,
Okay.
and we did the previous episodes of the podcast, kind of going over each of those specific ones. What is there anything that's really stood out to you about specific elite specs since then? Is there anything like anything specific that's kind of like, hey, what's going on here, or hey, that's cool, or hey, whatever?
Yeah, Dragon Hunter for sure. Yeah, they buffed the shit out of the traps. Yeah, during the first and second, I think BW. Actually, I think it was the second. I can't even tell. The traps were absolute garbage. Like there was no incentive to use them, and then they attached boons on them, and then they gave the days, and we're like, okay, we'll use them now. So that is definitely one of the things that kind of stood out for me as well. There were other things as well across all professions. I was looking at engineer scrapper, where again a ton of passive mitigation, which they already had an abundance of. You had Herald, which again another form of passive mitigation via the shield proc at 25%. There were just a lot of things that they're just such an abundance of now. There's
Yeah.
too much of it. So they definitely. I'm not saying that every class, went from like 0 to hero, and in the BWEs between each balance patch, but it definitely felt like in some cases they listened to the community a little too much, or in some cases like with Berserker they didn't listen to them enough. So I would definitely say that that's probably the biggest thing that stood out for me. What about yourself?
Um, Well, the main thing that I've paid attention to and the thing that I've noticed is they made all of them feel a lot better. Like there were some that felt really good when they first came out, like Chronomancer, for example. Chronomancer feels as good, if not a little better than it did before. Although it Chronomancer felt really good when they first introduced it. Like I even said that when I did a review of it during that beta weekend. Is it just felt really good. It felt like it was doing everything it needed to do. It felt very fluid. So Chronomancer didn't really change much in that regard. It felt very good to begin with. But things like Dragon Hunter, things like Scrapper, things like Revenant, like a lot of the things that I had issues with, the kind of clunkiness of certain skills, those are a lot more fluid now. Like I'm trying to think of a good example. Like Rocket Charge on the Engineer Hammer now, the Scrapper Hammer, feels a lot better because when they first introduced it, it was this weird, unwieldy thing where you would like fly past your target and then you'd bound back, and like it was really awkward to use. And that's definitely somewhere that I'm happy they listened to the community on, because they improved the feel and the usability of all those skills, and now everything is a lot more fun to play. But yeah, I do agree with you that in some cases they may have given a little too much love to certain things, and made those a little ridiculous to deal with now.
It also feels as if that again a lot of that clunkiness has gone, which is really good. You obviously want to have as much smooth gameplay as you possibly can. Another issue with that, another instance of that rather, was the Necromancer, the number 2 on Reaper, which is their leap.
Yeah,
It would always go by your opponent because
Yep.
it was like the weirdest thing ever. But they fixed it, which is nice. Again, really good change. Revenants. This is gonna be funny because this is something that I've been, excuse my language, bitching about for like 3 years. Is the Revenant Sword 1, the auto attack use was a projectile.
Yeah.
And then they changed it to be a melee hit. And then every single Guardian that I knew, I'm like, what happened to Sword 1 on Guardian, where everyone despises that? You know what I mean? It being a projectile, and you would change it in a week. So that was another funny instance where I'm like, that's a little bit much, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I just remembered another really good example. The Great Sword 5 for Reaper, that would always, like, it would go wherever your legs were facing. Like if you were strafing and you tried using that skill on someone who you were facing, but you were kind of strafing around, it would go where you were running to, and it was just this really awkward thing. It's like, okay, I'm gonna rip him in, but you would see it like fly out to the right side of your screen. It's like, okay, that's not what I wanted to do.
Sorry.
Please fix.
Please fix now, hopefully soon. But yeah, that was another issue. Absolutely, there were definitely quite a few, mechanic issues, which I'm glad that they fixed. Which is again really really nice after experiencing it for so long. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, with what I saw.
Yeah. Now, as far as the elite specs now, what I guess we could probably go over like how each of them is like fitting into the current like PvP environment. Like where have you primarily seen each of these elite specs? Like what roles? Like how often do you see them
easy.
on teams? I mean, yeah, it'll be relatively easy, but it's still a good thing to go over for
of course,
listeners.
yeah, absolutely. This would be really easy to discuss and actually relatively quickly. We could just start from the top. Warriors, I don't even see them. I'm being honest. I don't see Warriors. Like they're like what's the rarest Pokemon out right now? What is that?
I have no idea. I haven't touched I haven't touched Pokemon since Gen 3.
Same here, but I'm just saying, like, picture like Mewtwo, whatever the case is. It's like a rare breed. It's just slowly dying off. You know what I mean? I've not seen a warrior, and when I do see warriors, very rare. They tend to be running just the standard strength, discipline, defense build.
Yep, because that's one of the few things that still works for us right now.
Yeah, so that's what I do see. Next one on the list, let's go with, I guess Guardian be easier. I do not ever see anything but a Dragon Hunter. Don't see anything. I don't see Bunker Guardian. I don't see Burn Guardian. I know you can have variations of the two while using Dragon Hunter, but at the end of the day, it's all power Dragon Hunter. That's all I see. Some people are running a lot of traps with the Elite Trap, which I don't recommend because of how easy it is to avoid and you lose the invulnerability, but that's just me. So I've been seeing a lot of that.
So you haven't seen any burn Dragon Hunters or any really burn Guardians? Wow.
None. I've also seen no bunkers anymore. Bunkers are pretty much dead as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the bunkers going away because we actually ran into that situation on our team where we were having issues with bunker.
Right.
But burn, like, I'm surprised such a strong build before Heart of Thorns came out just is nowhere to be seen. Because I would imagine that would be just as powerful, if not more so, with Dragon Iron. Because don't you have a number of things that can help you with those the blocks and the other things that will help you apply more burns?
Well, the issue with that, and this came down to with the massive trait revamp that came how many months ago? It was like wasn't it more than 6 months ago, where
Uh,
they made it so we have to do 3 lines instead of
that
sort of nitpicking.
was June.
Okay, so way back in June, just a little thing is, we Guardians got a lot of nerfs. We lost 4 damage modifiers. Amplified Wrath got nerfed. Um, a couple of things really got nerfed because one of the things you could take with that burn on block was called Defender's Flame at the time, and every single time you blocked, you did burning. What they did is they merged that with Amplified Wrath, but they put an internal cooldown on it. So your blocks now did very little burning because of that internal cooldown, and they lowered the percentage damage from burning as well because of that. So that, on top of not being able to bury your condies and whatnot, really does not make Burn Guardian a really good idea whatsoever. So that was an issue that was, or actually that's the biggest issue as to why Burn Guardian it's not there. So but I haven't seen any Burn Guardians at all because, again, all you're doing is putting down burning. You're not covering it up with anything. So anyone with a minimal amount of condition removal, which almost every single class has, will just look at it, laugh at you, remove it, and then work their way in tearing you apart.
Well, like that's what I would do on my warrior back after Burn Guard became a thing, but before Heart of Thorns on my warrior. Like, yeah, I would go up against Burn Guards, and I would just wait for them to stack all of their burning whatnot. But since there was no Connie cover, I would just swap weapons. Like warriors, we have the ability. We have Brawler's Recovery, which removes a condition whenever we swap weapon. I would just let them stack 20 stacks of burns, and then just swap weapon. Boom. There goes there goes the burst.
That's what I'm saying. So that's just you're better off running something that again is a decent amount of power to it with every single punch than something that has the potential to do even more damage, but is so easily cleansed the first time it's put on that you wouldn't even bother with it. So, not to mention if you try to run Burn Guardian, you now have to take out one of your lines that you need desperately to something that increases your burning. So what do you take? You can't. You're stuck. It's like the same thing with Warrior. You have to take these lines or else you are essentially screwed.
Yeah, the only difference there is that's just you can't do Burn Guard, whereas Warrior you can't do Warrior.
Yeah, that's the sad part. Oh. Next, well, let's say Necromancer. We'll go with that one.
Reapers.
Oh, but just before I go further, I have to tell you, from the beginning, when the expansion came out to now, I see no Guardians queuing up. I'll be honest with you. I feel like I am the only one left.
Welcome to the club with Warriors.
I think once people figured it out, they're like, yeah. I'm not, again, it's not a matter of being cocky. It's just what I've been seeing as I queue up every single day now is I don't see any other Guardians, dude, and It's scary. But yeah, I know. I don't want to be on that club. That's a bad club to be on, dude. Trust me, I'm sure you already know it's a bad club, dude.
Yep. Right. You're right here with Thieves and Warriors.
But Necromancers. I see Reapers. All Reapers. I don't see base Necromancer anymore. Chillmancers, either Celestial or Carrion. Mostly Carrion, because if they're running Celestial, I don't think they can break through the Diamond Skin Elementalists.
No. Yeah, Carrion is a really powerful build with the chill does damage trait.
Yeah, it does a lot of damage. Very, very pesky to fight. A lot of chill up time. So I've been seeing a lot of those. We went over Revenants, right? No.
We didn't kind of go over their role in the PvP environment right now. I don't think.
Oh, I keep forgetting about roles. I'm sorry. Okay, so we discussed Guardian and Warrior. Warrior doesn't have a role.
Yeah,
Guardian
that's another problem with us. But anyway.
Yeah, there's no role. Guardian's now not going to have much of a role anymore. Reaper, again.
Bruiser, I would say, probably.
Bruiser, to a lesser extent than Scrapper, Tempest, and Druid, but yeah, they definitely fall within that category. Revenant, Bruiser, another one, but the thing is they have the damage of a freaking Burst Warrior and the mobility of a Thief. So they have the Bruiser tankiness while also maintaining that high damage spike.
Yeah. So I think I forgot who it was before Heart of Thorns came out, but someone was like, Revenant is the new DDLE. Because
they are in a sense, but they have less sustain. I will say I can take down Revenants. I can't take down DDLEs, or I couldn't. but at the same token, they also have a lot more burst than a DDLE could bring, so that they kind of have their shortcomings all shored up. Not all of them, but to a decent extent. Um, but I would definitely say they're the bruisers, and you kind of see what the theme we're going on with this is that all I'm listing is bruisers, 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 and bruisers.
Yeah.
Because that's the name. This is literally Bruiser Wars too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You put out as much damage as you possibly can while maintaining as much tankiness as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Then you have Tempest. All I see is Tempest now. Those again. This is to where I was discussing with other players is that those are just incredible amounts of boon sharing. Just again, I've never seen 40 plus seconds of protection in an AoE in my life until Tempest came out. They are literally putting that much protection on their teammates, and I didn't think that'd be possible.
Yeah, I've actually one of the things that came about from our team comp switching craziness was I was playing Tempest for a while, and we actually scrimmed against you when you were helping Nimix's team, and I was on Tempest, and yeah, I'm well aware of how much boon sharing and whatnot you can get out of a Tempest because yeah, you've got all of the auramancy traits, you've got the boons that you can apply with the different aura share trait. Like it's a ridiculous amount of boon share. The thing is, I don't know if I would really consider Tempest Bruiser in this. They seem very. You can
More
either run.
bunkery.
Yeah, you can either run like bunker support or you can run a bit more bruisery with Sally Amulet. But
Right.
even then, like they don't seem as bruiser as say a Scrapper or a Revenant. Like they have a lot of sustain, but they don't quite have as much damage as some of the other bruisers you see out there. I would
Yeah.
probably classify them more as a support bunker with a bit of damage if you run.
I can agree with that. Yeah,
the Sally
absolutely.
Amulet.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense now. Yeah, absolutely. I just think of everything whenever I label something bunker, I'm thinking bunker guardian to where you're doing like no damage and you're all
Yeah.
support with bunker. Well, again, Tempest is all support and bunker while us still putting out a tiny bit more damage. So that's just kind of how I feel. That's why I've always labeled them as bruisers is because they can still put out some damage to you. But yeah, I could definitely agree that they are the more bunkery specs out there. I still think just with the sheer amount of boon spam out there, it's gotten out of hand.
Oh,
It's like
they're fantastic group support. I can guarantee that.
yeah, there's way too many boons, man. Like just protection should not be thrown around like candy. I'm sorry, it shouldn't. It's thrown around. It's now thrown around like candy. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be doing that. It's a bad idea.
It's like that Ranger episode way back when with the whole you had that whole rant on protection on dodge that they get.
Yeah, absolutely. It should not be thrown around like candy. You should have to work for it. You know what I mean? And it just seems like there's just so much out there, especially with again overloading your Earth. It's pretty rough. And and again the whole argument is with it being boom removal. That's not a good argument anymore because not every single class can do that reliably. You know what I mean? That's not a good argument. When you only have like 2, maybe 3 classes that can do something, that's not a good counter. That's not. Because then you're shutting out like 70% of the other classes who can't pull that off. Then what do you say? So that is why I think there's just a little bit too much boon spam out there now.
Yeah.
What's next? We have, let me go down the list. I keep forgetting what we haven't discussed.
Well, we can hit Scrapper. Engineer.
Yes, Scrapper, Engineer. Bruisers, without a doubt, they've always been bruisers. Their trait line is full of so much ridiculous sustain, passive sustain as well. Again, your typical build involves alchemy, scrapper, and X, usually tools or firearms, and just the amount of protection you gain while doing nothing, the amount of sustain you gain while literally doing nothing. It's not nearly as bad as the boon share on Ellie's, which again is more of a bunker than a bruiser, but I don't like passive play to that degree. Yeah. So they're definitely bruisers. They're stronger bruisers than they've ever been because of that fact. So yeah, that's definitely their role. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. They're pretty much entirely like that's what we use for our team is our NG goes Scrapper and he basically goes and holds points while we do all of our other stuff on the other 2 points and he does it really well. Like he's able to just stay alive forever and keep a point contested or keep it under control, and unless they send multiple people to that point to deal with him, he's not going to lose that fight. Like he can bruiser very, very well, and also like not only that, but he can also go and +1 team fights and do just fine there too.
Hmm.
Now, I have seen a couple of them. I don't know if this would still be considered bruiser or not, but I have seen a few setups where the Engi will go Kandi, and you'll have like a Kandi. I don't know if they run Scrapper or not, but there are. I have seen some Kandi setups coming out of Engis, not as
Well,
much
it's
as
with
before.
firearms. It's
Yeah,
firearms they're
yeah, with
using with the
firearms.
incendiary powder.
Yeah, like they're around, but I obviously don't see them as much as a power bruiser scrapper. But I have seen a few of those around, and RNG has actually messed with going with the Kandi build periodically. Now we don't really need him to do that anymore because we have a Reaper on our team. But
Right. But again, it just goes hand in hand. A lot of passive, offensive, and defensive. Coming out from that. Which again, bruisers. That's essentially what they are. Unfortunately, to some degree. Next class we're gonna
we can do
do
Druids.
druids. Oh God, bruisers. Definitely bruisers.
Yep. Well, bunkers too, and team support.
Bunkers too. Bunkers, team support, bruisers. They encompass all of that. The amount of sustain they can put out for them and their teammates while in celestial form is insane. Almost on par, I would say, with an Ellie's. Maintaining relative tankiness due to their Signet of Stone, evades, very, very strong. Um, it's, yeah.
Now
Again, what's that?
the thing with druids though, and I've noticed this is for whatever reason, for as much sustain, as much ability they have to keep themselves and the allies alive, I can still kill them on my warrior.
Right.
I'm not sure what it is. It may just be because there are enough gaps in their ability to keep themselves alive, or maybe
Mm,
it's just I'm able to fake them out enough to be able to rip those to take advantage of those windows
right.
is they are susceptible to windows of burst. And if you have, say, even a warrior, or you have like a Mesmer Chronomancer Shatter, or you have a thief, or you have a Dragon Hunter, if you can spike them at the right time, they will go down. Like they,
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Forcing the signet and then going from there, absolutely, without a
yeah,
doubt. Again, it just goes back to what I was saying about having so much sustain while again, still putting out a decent amount of damage either via their pets, you know, and again, it's very strong. It's still again the specs that Final Form ran were two Sentinel, Sentinel.
yeah,
You can't burst that down. I guarantee you can't because the team they fought against ran four MOAs, two Mesmers on each side with their F5s, four MOAs, and they couldn't burst these guys down.
yeah.
So that was hilarious, I have to say.
Well,
So I think when you run against something like that, it's ugh.
Well, I think one of the reasons why even with four MOAs they weren't able to deal with it is because a lot of the druid stuff is over time. Like they apply a lot of regen, they apply a lot of just kind of AOE overtime healing, and having all of that stuff kind of around. Like they've got the seeds they can drop with their glyphs, and just on I think no, Celestial Form also has as well, but they can drop a lot of things that are either delayed healing or just a lot of regen, and that's how they can keep themselves alive even in the face of MOAs for days.
Right. And again, I think that needs to be something that also should be looked at as well. Again, that's why again we've been discussing it, and I'm not sure if you agree with me or not, but I prefer a more defined role type of game where you have to give up something if you want this. So the that just seems again, it's a bruiser.
Yeah.
I mean, would you agree with that? It's a
It,
bruiser.
I
I
would
mean,
say
at the end of the day,
it can fill bruiser, but I more often
bunker.
see it used as team sport bunker.
Right. Next, for Daredevil, I actually still see them run on teams, and
Yeah,
they have been somewhat successful because of their mobility, and they have gotten a lot more sustained through the evades that they've gained from Daredevil.
yeah,
I don't find them to be as ridiculous as the other four or the other ones I've mentioned, but I still think they have a role, even though you can still technically take a Revenant and be on the safer side instead of a Thief.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
So but their ability to +1 on top of decaps is still there. Even
yeah.
though, again, a Revenant can, say, nope, not doing that, because I'm still pretty much just as fast as you are. So I think they still have a place as roamers, but that's all they can really do.
Yeah, that's the big thing that I've heard from the thief community. A lot of people that I've talked to who main thieves is they have one role, but they're pigeonholed into that one role, and they can't really do much else. And also, they're competing with revenants who can arguably do it better in a more coordinated situation. But yes, I do see them around periodically as well. They are, as a warrior, they're a pain in the ass to deal with because all the evades, but I can still deal with them somewhat easily. But yeah, they're pretty much stuck in decapping and plus oneing, and when they're plus oneing, they have to be super careful because they, just like with warriors, don't have a lot of that sustain to keep themselves in a fight for very long, and they only have so many shadow steps, so many ways to get out of a fight that if they run out of those and they make the mistake of going back in, they're done. Like
Right.
they're
But that's how it
definitely
should be.
yeah.
That's a good way to play the game. Is you have ways to be bursted down. Yes, you've been given more tools to evade, but there are windows to where if you screw up, which how it should be for every class, you know,
Yeah.
you should be punished. That's why, again, with the other ones mentioned being bruisers, you're not really punished. You might take a tiny bit of damage, you might hurt a little bit, but you'll recover shortly after. So that's why I still like Thief. It's bursty, it's still mobile, it has more evade spam. Yes, I get that, but it can still be dealt with in an efficient manner as long as you're careful.
Yeah.
Did we discuss Chrono?
Actually, no, I don't think we have. Well, no, we haven't actually. I touched on it from like how things felt between beta weekends and now. And funny enough, the background footage I've got has been me playing Chrono this entire time. But we have
You've been
got
doing good. I've been watching it. You've been doing good.
I still make a lot of mistakes. But anyway, yeah,
Well, someone who doesn't mean it, yeah. I mean, that's okay. That's still impressive either way you look at it.
But yeah, Chronomancer, I see them pretty much in the same role as Mesmers were with Shatterer and Condi and whatnot. But also I see them in, there's this crazy build I've run into a couple times. It's basically evasion bunker or evasion team support where they use things like Well of Precog and they have I think it's distortion share on Signet, and it's just this like it's impossible to burst these guys down because they if they time their evasion and their distortion properly, you're not getting any damage through them. And then the fact that they've got all those evades flying around means that their team it can't really be bursted down if you try and spike them at the wrong moments. I've only run into it a couple times, but it's crazy. It's this absolutely nuts build.
Well, let me ask you something, because that actually sounds to me like they're playing thieves with more utility, doesn't it? Because I've fought builds like that to where they have that sustain, but there are short windows to where they can take some massive damage. Um, it almost feels like they're a little bit like just more support versions of thieves, don't they? To some degree, I could see that maybe. No,
Kind of. I don't know if I would. Well, theme wise, yeah, I could see it, but
because I've seen that build. I know which build you're talking about. Again, it just seems like once those wells are done, you can definitely take some significant damage.
yeah,
I'm not saying that you're gonna go down right away, but I've seen builds like that, and there are again very small windows. I'm not saying they're long by any means. There are windows of opportunity that you can take to really hamper down on a bunker mesmer. I've even seen ones again. Another example would be again Final Forms running the two mesmers. They were running three wells. You know what I mean? They're not bunker by any means, but they have the sustain through the multiple evasions, gravity well given the CC. So a decent amount of good sustain from them as well for their teammates as well. And I think that it works really good for them. I don't know if I would label it as it's not bunker because they were running Marauders, so but it definitely felt like they had a decent amount of sustain via the evasions.
yeah. I would still classify them as either a like with that type of build. I would say yeah, they can be support, but they're other than that, I would still kind of classify Chronomancers as +1 mobility, spike burst or Connie pressure, just because they can't really bunker super well because yeah, there are those windows where you can blow them up, and there's just a lot that goes into staying alive as a Chronomancer and as a Mesmer, just like before, to where you can't really rely. Like if your opponent has enough pressure, as a lot of the other elite specs do have, kind of like a constant pressure, it's not easy to really stay alive with Chronomancer unless you are doing everything well, unless you're timing everything right and you're making sure all of your skills chain into one another properly. Like actually, this makes me think of something. Okay, we've been talking about how like certain things are maybe a bit more reward than the effort you put into them, or things aren't rewarding enough for the amount of effort you have to put into them, like in the case of Warriors and whatnot. I actually feel that Chronomancer is one of the more balanced as far as effort put in versus reward that comes out, because
I
if you
completely agree.
yeah, like if you fuck up on a Chronomancer, you're done. Like I after practicing with it more and more, like if I don't use my skills at the right time, or if I make the wrong call or the wrong decision at any given time against any class, I die. Like there's just nothing I can do about it. But if I chain everything together properly, or if a really good Chronomancer chains everything together properly, and they know how to time all their skills correctly and when to use everything and whatnot, they're just this force that just destroys everyone. Like it's crazy to see